And we are live, everyone. Welcome back. Toby and I were on earlier giving you updates, which before we bring our special guest on, who I have the utmost respect, and it's an honor to be on speaking with him, Robert Salas, retired Air Force captain. We'll get more into Robert in a second, and we'll bring him on. But first, Toby, the video. It may not be the video that we think, right? That's good that they're going to premiere.
Yeah, I don't know. There's a lot of conflicting information out there right now.
Okay.
So I just don't know one way or another.
For those that may not be aware, there's going to be a News Nation special on Saturday, 8 p.m. Eastern. And Ross Coulthart is supposed to bring forward a whistleblower, and they're going to show a video of a crash retrieved object. Now, if you go to News Nation, you can see that they say it there. Toby, what exactly did it say about showing an exclusive video of, what was it exactly?
An exclusive video of a crash retrieval of a UAP.
There you go. And that's on the News Nation site. So I would suggest anyone interested in this field of UAP disclosure, please go check that out. DVR, get your DVRs all set up because this could be quite interesting. Amongst everything else that's going on in the background, and I want to give a special shout out to Stephen Bassett and the work that he's been doing for decades, and is connected with our guest to try to get our guest here, and we'll get more into detail, to possibly appear at an upcoming hearing, which this is the kind of person you want at these hearings, a direct witness to an account that happened at the Malmstrom Air Force Base on March. Let me see the date. What was the date, Bob? 27th? 67?
24th.
24th.
March 24th.
March 24th. And I kind of threw Bob in there, but Robert, his background is impeccable. It's only due to certain circumstances. And it's pretty interesting, the story when he tells you on how he found out that his story was even out there. It's kind of like remarkable in itself. And then he figured, since it's out there, I might as well come forward, because you have to realize a lot of these individuals, they sign NDAs. They cannot disclose. It's secret. They can't come forward. It's sworn to secrecy. That's criminal in behavior if they were to come out and reveal secretive material to the public. It is, correct, Bob?
That is absolutely right. My NDA that I signed stated specifically that I would be spending time in Leavenworth Prison, which is a federal prison, if I disclosed the incident.
Wow.
That I'm about to disclose to you.
Right.
And your
So,
audience.
without any further ado, the floor is now Mr. Salas's, because we want him to tell you what he experienced in the command center at the time and what was going on above ground with security officers speaking with him about what was going on up there and the whole incident. He's going to give you the details, so I'm going to now quiet up, and the floor is all yours, Robert.
Okay, well, again, March 24th, 1967, I and my commander, a two-man crew, were stationed underground at what we call a launch control facility. And we had control of 10 Minuteman I missiles, nuclear, obviously, strategic missiles. And what happened was, sometime in the evening, I'm on duty in charge of the facility. By the way, it's one of 15 scattered throughout Montana at that time. And each launch control facility had responsibility for 10 Minuteman I missiles. But sometime in the evening, my flight security controller, who's the main guard upstairs, we had about 6 guards, but we had one called the flight security controller, called down and said, sir, we've been seeing a lot of strange lights in the sky. They're obviously under control. They're flying. stopping in midair, reversing course, making 90-degree turns, and going very fast, but there's no engine noise. And he said, "Sir, these are not airplanes." I said to him, because of what he said, I said, "You mean like UFOs?" Because I was just joking with him because we had reports in the city of Great Falls, where Malmstrom Air Force Base is located, reports in the local newspaper of people reporting these strange lights in the sky all that week. So I was just pulling his leg a little bit, and he said, "Sir, all I can say is they're not aircraft, because these things are doing things that aircraft can't do." And I said, "Well, thank you for your report. Let me know when something interesting happens or anything changes." And I basically hung up on him. I wasn't taking that call very seriously. At that time, I certainly was not focused in on UFOs or that subject in general. But then, so 5 or 10 minutes go by, and he calls back, and this time he's yelling into the phone, screaming. He's obviously frightened. I can tell by his voice, and he says, I finally calm him down. He says, "Sir, I'm looking, and I've got all the guards out. Their weapons are pointed at this glowing red-orange object. It's basically a bright, very bright orange light hovering just above the front gate." And I tried to get more details about what he was looking at, and he said he could barely see inside the light, but it seemed like there was a solid object in there, oval-shaped, and again, he was very frightened.
Did he say how large it was, Robert? Did he say like approximately?
I asked him later, and he said it was about 40 or 50 feet in diameter.
Okay.
That was just an estimate, but that's what he said. And he said, "What do I do, sir?" And I turned it back on him because they were in charge of security for the facility. And I said, "Make sure that nothing enters the fenced-in area." So basically, I was telling him to, use all means and measures to keep anyone out. Because at that point, honestly, it felt like we were under attack. It felt like some sort of an attack was going to be taking place. Now, I want to emphasize that upstairs, they had no control over the missiles. Nothing they could do would affect the status of our missiles. We had all the controls down underground.
And you were locked in, right?
Underground.
You were 60 feet underground, but you were locked in. You couldn't even get out, or could you? I mean, you were locked in there. You and the other officer.
That's right. That's right. We were locked in. We were obliged to keep that door closed because of the possibility that if we got overrun by some force and had that door open, they could take over the facility and possibly launch missiles. So, yeah, we were obliged to keep that door closed. That's why I couldn't go up there and take a look myself. Otherwise, I would have. But after I told him that, secure the facility, we hung up. In fact, he says one of the guards got injured. I have to go, and so he hung up the phone. And then I went over to tell my commander about the phone calls. He was taking a rest break. We had a little cot down there. Of course, one of us had to be on alert during the whole 24-hour period we were down there. So I woke him up and I was about to tell him about the calls, and all of a sudden we get a horn blast in the capsule, which we knew what that meant. It meant that one of our missiles went down. In other words, was no longer operational.
Wow.
So we looked at the board, and sure enough, one of the missiles went down, and then very shortly thereafter, all 10 of them went down. So we had 10 missiles no-go, or unlaunchable within seconds.
Wow.
So we jumped up and started going through our checklist, and we also had at two of the facilities, the launch facilities are where the missiles are actually located. They're located about a mile or so away from our central command area. And at two of those locations, we had incursion lights, meaning the possibility of something entering those facilities. And so I had to call up and send guards out there to take a look. And when I called upstairs, talked to the flight security controller again, and I asked him about the object, and he said it just flown off very rapidly. So it was up there when these missiles were shut down.
Wow.
And my commander called the command post back at Malmstrom. We had a wing command post, and they told him, because he turned around after the call and told me the same thing happened at another flight. In other words, another similar facility as ours, and they lost all 10 of their missiles during UFO sighting. At that time, I thought he meant that evening that happened, but later, when I did some research, I realized it happened 8 days earlier, and that was the Echo flight incident. We were at Oscar flight. Now, so the next thing, basically, we coordinated with the maintenance people to bring crews out there to bring the missiles back up on alert. We did have a way of querying the system, what the cause was of the shutdowns, and the message we were getting was guidance and control system failure.
So electronic in nature, and electronic signal.
Well, the guidance system, yes, is. There are a lot of electronics associated with it. It was also an inertial system. Of course, we didn't have GPS at the time. By inertial, I mean that it had gyroscopes, it had accelerometers, things like that would calculate the direction, speed, etc. after the launch of the missile. So that whole system had was the cause of the shutdown. Later on, when Boeing got involved, Boeing was the main contractor for the Minuteman Missile, and one of the tests that they did was a bench test on something called the logic coupler. And this was all written up in a document we received, but they did a test on the logic coupler and were able to send a very short duration signal into that piece of hardware to trigger the shutdown of the missile. So there's a speculation that might have been the cause, but Boeing report said that this would have had to have been an external signal. In other words, nothing within the system itself, no failure mode within the guidance system could have caused it. It had to come from outside. So if we extend that logic, this object, or UFO, would have had to penetrate 60 feet of earth and concrete with a signal, and then penetrate the each of the individual cables going to each missile separately. And this cable was about 9 inches in diameter. It was triply shielded against EMI, electromagnetic interference. So this object would have had to send a signal through each of those cables.
Wow.
And direct it directly to this logic coupler and upset the system, the guidance system, so that the missile could not be launched, which is something that, of course, we had no capability of doing.
I was going to ask you that.
Later,
Could there? I have to
no.
throw this in there. So it's not like the Russians, this Cold War, had an aircraft overhead or some type of satellite technology that could have done something like this, especially with 60 feet of concrete between you and the ground surface.
As far as I know, that's correct. Now, the Air Force did do their own investigation. Boeing did their own investigation as ordered by the Air Force. They later told Boeing to stop their investigation. I've got records of that. I've got all kinds of documents supporting what I'm telling you. And the Air Force investigation was classified secret. So when we went to ask the Air Force under the Freedom of Information Act for documents about what I thought was my incident, it was not my incident, it was the Echo incident. They refused to send that classified report. But that is one thing that, for example, Aero or Congress could request to the Air Force a copy of that report and find out more details.
And we'll get into that a little bit later on. But Toby, do you have anything to add with Robert right now? Do you want to ask him anything specific while we're up to this point?
No, I'm just really enjoying hearing this straight from him.
Exactly. And this is why this is so important. But now you signed obviously an NDA. That's criminal if you were to come out with this publicly. But I found it fascinating how you found out that your story, your account was out there. Can you get into that a little bit?
Sure, yeah. After we were relieved the next morning by another crew, we were ordered to go to our squadron commander's office. We were helicoptered back and went directly to the squadron commander's office. First thing I asked him was this some sort of Air Force exercise? He said, absolutely not. Also with him in the office was a man from AFOSI, Air Force Office of Special Investigation. And he shoved a piece of paper in our faces and said, sign here.
There you go.
And this was the NDA, non-disclosure agreement, that we were never to speak about this to anyone, that the incident we just experienced was classified, now classified, and never were we to tell anyone about it.
Wow.
Not anyone in the Air Force, not any relative or wife or anybody. So essentially we had to sign it, even though we complained because we had already had above top secret clearances. And but we did sign it. And again, we were not given a copy, but I remember reading it before I signed it. And the document did mention a lot of jail time at Leavenworth Prison if we were ever to disclose.
That's scary. That's scary in itself. Just stating it in plain English.
Believe me, it scared me at the time too.
I bet.
In fact, I didn't speak about it to anyone, not even my wife, until 1994. So that's what, 27 years later.
Yeah.
I was in Seattle, Washington, at the University of Washington, signing up for a Master's of Education program. I was going to be a teacher. I was getting out of the Federal Aviation Administration where I worked, and happened to be walking through the bookstore at the University of Washington, and a book title caught my eye. It was called Above Top Secret by Timothy Good. And I picked up the book and happened to open it to page, 301. If any of you have that book, you can do this.
Yep.
Anyway, it was the only page in the entire book, which was a large book, maybe 500 pages. But it was the only place that talked about missiles being shut down at Malmstrom Air Force Base in 1966 and 67 during a UFO flyover or encounter. And the way it described that, it sounded like what I had recalled from my incident. Of course, I was flabbergasted because I thought, wow, if they have declassified my incident, maybe I can talk about it now, since it's no longer classified. So I got kind of excited, maybe a little overexcited, and went home. I bought the book, of course, still have it. I went home and told my wife about the incident that I experienced and showed her the writing in the book on that. I thought that was my incident. And so one of her friends happened to be there, and she suggested I contact Mutual UFO Network and get an investigator to help me submit a FOIA request, FOIA, about documents that they might release, since this was obviously something in this book that's been declassified. So that's what we did. A man by the name of James Klotz, the co-author of the book I wrote, first book I wrote, Fated Giant is what it's called. Anybody can get it on Amazon. And we wrote a FOIA request. I told Jim not to say anything about UFOs, just about this paragraph in this book, and asked if they could send us any documents about the shutdown of missiles in 1967 in March. And lo and behold, the Air Force wrote back and said, this is classified, but since it's been so long, we're going to declassify this incident.
Wow.
And at that point, they really had no other choice, because it was a public document of this book. But anyway, they decided to do that, declassified. What they declassified was the Echo flight shutdown. Now, at that time, I couldn't remember which flight I had been at. So I thought it was my flight. And so when we received these documents declassifying the Echo incident, I thought I made the decision myself, really, to start speaking about it as the incident that I was involved in, and it involved UFOs. So I went public. In fact, I gave an interview to the Great Falls Tribune in August of 1996 and told the entire story. And later on, I gave radio interviews, the Art Bell Show, and others. And finally, another TV interview. So I started talking. Again, I knew I was taking a chance, but I thought that was my incident, and the Air Force has declassified it, so they have no reason to hold me to an NDA.
But it wasn't. But it wasn't.
But it wasn't. It wasn't my incident.
Oh, that one. But that must have went off well after that all came out.
Well, I had to take a big gulp after I found that out. But it wasn't until 1996, sometime in 96, that I finally contacted the man who was in the capsule with me that evening. That's Fred Mywald. He was a retired full colonel at that time.
Wow.
And we spoke about it. He confirmed that we did have UFO sightings, not just during our incident, but later on when the guards went out to check out this light. I mentioned the incursion light at two of the facilities. They saw UFOs again over those facilities. He confirmed that, and he confirmed that we lost more than one missile during that incident. But he also confirmed that we were not at Echo Flight. We were at Oscar Flight.
Wow.
And with the documentation I had, and then with another witness that came forward, Robert Jameson, we found out the dates of the two incidents. The Echo Flight went down March 16th, and the Oscar Flight went down March 24th.
Which is yours.
Which was ours, yeah.
Wow. I got a couple of quick questions before you continue. I gotta jump in because you made me think about your incident. First, you said someone was injured. Someone said that they were injured above. Did anyone suffer from any kind of medical illness, adverse reactions to their close proximity to this object that you were aware of?
Well, I know many of those guards refused to go back on guard duty after that. That was confirmed again by Colonel Mywald. They had been so shaken up, frightened by the incident that they did not want to do that anymore. So somehow they got relieved of duty. But as far as injuries go, there was a hand injury to one of the guards. That's what my FSC was referring to. And later I got confirmation of that in writing from an airman who had been in the same squadron with these people, and they were talking with this individual at the barracks in the ensuing days. He had to have some stitches in his hand. Now, he said that he had heard the possibility of two things happening. One is his rifle jammed and he got his hand caught in that. And the other possibility was that he tried to climb the fence, maybe out of fear. I don't know.
Did anyone fire? You said earlier.
Barbed wire. Barbed wire of the fence.
You said earlier that they were pointing their weapons toward it. Do you know if anybody actually did fire upon this?
I don't know.
Okay.
That's what I hope would be in the Air Force report, classified report that I mentioned. So those kind of details would be in there.
Interesting.
But
the
next morning when I got up after, coming home after that incident, I got a call from these guys, the security guards. There was a whole group of them that were begging me to come out and talk to them about this, thinking, I could surely explain the whole thing to them. But I told them I was under an NDA and I could not speak with them about it.
Wow.
I had to turn him down, and that just killed me because he, like I said, these guys have been. Well, try to put yourself in their shoes. You see this bright light, pulsating light, about 100 feet away from you in the sky, and just hovering there, no engine noise, nothing. It's not an airplane, it's not a helicopter, and what do you do with that sight? How do you deal with that? And I had to turn him down. That just bothered me for so long.
I can't imagine.
It was one of the things that has motivated me all these years to keep going and get to the bottom of what happened.
Toby, you had a question?
Yeah, so when the object was over top of you guys, did your radios experience any, like, static or humming or anything?
We were on a telephone line, but
Okay.
when the guards went out to investigate at those two launch facilities, and saw the objects out there, they lost radio contact. They had, I think they were UHF handheld radios, but they lost radio reception and transmission. They couldn't transmit back to the flight security controller who had been talking to them while these objects were in the area. So they definitely interfered with communications. So.
Wow.
Interesting.
Now, I am assuming, and you can clarify this, that everything is classified, including any kind of radar or any indication that would have showed this object over the base. I'm assuming that everything regarding this is classified, or have you had success with FOIA, Freedom of Information Act, getting any kind of documentation related to this now?
Well, actually, I don't want to complicate things, but there was another incident that evening. And this was a truck driver driving through a little town called Belt, Montana.
Mm-hmm.
It was about 35 miles to the southeast of Great Falls. And he was driving his truck and suddenly noticed a bright light to his left. And it was blinking at him. So he stopped his truck and took a better look, and sure enough, it was this white glowing object. And it stopped in midair, and then it proceeded to land in the area near him.
Wow.
Well, the truck driver immediately got a hold of Highway Patrol, and the Highway Patrolman came out and saw the object that had landed in this gully. And then they both saw it rise out of the gully and take off. They came back later on, and then they decided to call the Air Force. The Air Force went out there. The base ops officer and wrote a large report. And at the same time, they were getting sightings over Malmstrom Air Force Base. And they actually launched interceptors. We had a fighter interceptor squadron on base, and they launched interceptors to take a look at these things. Of course, they never caught them, but they also had them on radar. So there were radar paints on these objects in that area around Malmstrom on that same evening.
Mm-hmm.
Now, this is critical because this was written up in a documentation by the base ops officer, and he sent this documentation up the channel of command, including Edward Condon himself who is conducting the Khan investigation at the time. So I just want to point out that, yeah, this was in the local newspaper and in some documents we received that UFOs were seen over the base, and they were painted on radar, seen on radar, and there was fighter aircraft were launched to intercept these objects.
Wow. Now, are you still, or I don't know what the situation is now because it's many years later, decades later, are any of the security officers that were above ground still in contact with you? Are they still alive? Are they willing to testify? There's so many questions here.
I have never heard from any of those guards.
Wow.
Because one of the reasons is they were dispersed to other bases after this incident.
Yeah.
And the Air Force does this in order to maintain secrecy on these things. They get rid of the witnesses so they don't congregate and talk to each other about it, even though they're not supposed to. A lot of them were probably sent to Vietnam. This was during the Vietnam War era, and
Wow.
because they were weapons qualified and probably sent to Vietnam. So again, I've never heard from any of them. I did hear from this, like I said, in writing from one of the people that knew these guys, and he wrote about the injury, the hand injury that I talked about.
Bob, how many years has it been since you officially started doing all of these presentations, radio interviews, TV interviews, documentaries, etc.? It's been quite some time. I mean, it is your ultimate goal to get this out to the public for disclosure and get the truth out to the people, what actually happened on that base on that evening, correct?
Correct. And so it's been over 30 years since I first started going public. Like I kind of glossed over it, but I did make a decision once I found out from Colonel Mywald that we were not at Echo, we were at Oscar, and I had been blabbing about the Echo flight incident. I decided, since it was so similar to the one we experienced, even including the failure mode, guidance and control system failure, that I would continue talking about it. And I made that decision on my own, even though I knew I was technically in violation of my NDA. But because the Air Force had declassified Echo, a very similar incident to ours, and by the way, I've got the commander during the incident of Echo flight on audio tape, officially.
His testimony.
On tape,
His testimony would occur.
Stating the testimony that security guards and maintenance personnel had seen UFOs hovering over the launch of the missiles. At the time, his missiles went down, all 10 of them, and that was the Echo flight incident. So now he hasn't been vocal about speaking about it. He hasn't been public, but I've got all his contact information, his name, of course, and where he lives, his phone number, etc. And I can provide that to Congress if they ask for it, certainly.
Do you think he would testify, though? Is he willing? Do you know?
I think he doesn't want to. I've asked him for his own reasons, but I've spoken to. I've written to him as recently as about a week ago. I know he's still alive, but if Congress had the ability to subpoena him as a witness, I think he would probably come and testify
Wow.
under subpoena. Yeah.
Toby, anything? You have anything to add right now? You want to add anything?
No, this has just been really, really cool to get to hear all this.
Oh, gosh, yes.
Directly from you, Robert.
Oh, yeah. Now,
Yeah, you bet.
Now here, let's fast forward to the present now. With everything that's gone on, we get a good synopsis of what happened at Malmstrom from you. So you were at the UAP hearing on November 13th. You were in the audience when Alessandro was there with Gold and what's his? I always mispronounce Schellenberger. What's his last name? The journalist, Toby. What's his last name?
Schellenberger.
Schellenberger. There you go. Thank you. And I know that Steven, because he's told me that Steven was on it, and you know this, Robert. He was putting all your information on all the tables. He was sending them digital stuff. He really was saying, listen, you people need to pay attention to the gentleman that's here in this audience, Mr. Salas, and his account. And then after the hearing, you met with someone. Give us a little background on how that went.
Yeah, I met with the chairwoman of the hearing in her office after the hearing was over.
Nancy Mace, correct? Nancy Mace?
Nancy Mace, yes.
Mm-hmm.
And luckily, a man by the name of Tyler Roberts, who has a podcast called the Total Disclosure Project, I think it's called.
Mm-hmm.
But he was able to arrange this meeting because he had arranged to meet with her before, and he graciously allowed me to take that meeting with her instead of him.
Wow.
But he was able to, he did film it. He did videotape of the entire meeting between me and Nancy Mace, and also Stephen Bassett was in the room. So, yeah, I went over my incident, answered her questions. At one point she said I was very credible, and she also said that she would be interested in having a hearing with witnesses like myself and others who had experienced UFO incidents over nuclear weapons bases. So
that's what I was waiting for.
We're hopeful.
That's what I was waiting for. Wait, before you continue, because Lou Alazan, it is the nuclear thing, because I'm hearing this from numerous people, and I'm sure Toby is too. They are focusing on the nuclear aspect of this. Alessandro said it in the hearing. Alessandro said it again, I think, today when he was on with Donald Trump Jr. on Triggered. So I didn't mean to interrupt you, but I think that is the narrative that's going around, that the next hearing could be direct witnesses like yourself that were involved in some kind of incident that involved either nuclear weapons or it was once some type of a nuclear facility, but nuclear in nature, correct?
I haven't heard that rumor, but certainly Nancy Mace said she was very interested in doing that. I think also Representative Burleson
Yes.
was also interested in speaking with us. So that's why I'm hopeful that it will happen. And of course, I've got my bags packed, ready to go.
I know you are, because we spoke previously, and it would be. I mean, and I know Marilyn is like, yes, let's go.
And
I've got my bags
Marilyn's
packed too. So that would be awesome.
She's not going to stay home for that.
Yeah. Also, I got to add this little part of the equation. How difficult do you think it's going to be with everything that's going on? We see the frustration with congressional members trying to get information that's overly classified, as they mentioned, as you were there numerous times, the overclassification, so they can't get access to some of this stuff. Well, not some, most of it, if not all of it, that's SAP labeled, let's just say, and especially if it's unacknowledged or wavered, unacknowledged SAPs. But You think that you'll be able to get congressional members? How hopeful are you that they can get enough documentation, even the radar blips, the hits, everything that has to do directly with Oscar?
Well, again, we've got a very strong, and I've written about this in my books. I've written 3 books. Faded Giant was the first one, and it's got a lot of the FOIA documents in the appendices. If anybody's interested in that, I also wrote another one called let's see, what's that? Unidentified UFO Phenomenon. And then the last one I just published is called UAPs and the nuclear puzzle. Yeah, UAPs and the nuclear puzzle. And in each of those books, I point out that I'm convinced that there is a very strong, well-organized, well-funded group. I call them a cabal because that's what they are. A group within government, within our government and other governments, not just the U.S. government, but other governments, that is hell-bent on maintaining this secrecy for their own reasons. And we can all speculate as to what those reasons are, but so it's going to be very difficult, but I don't think impossible for Congress to start insisting for agencies to turn over what they have. It may take a presidential decree or something to release this information because, like you said, a lot of it is highly classified, and there's a whole process for declassifying material like that. And it could get entangled in, the bureaucracy, and it's difficult, let's put it that way, but doable, I think.
Okay, I gotta add something. And Toby, did you watch when Ross Coulthart was on with Lou Alexander with Donald Trump Jr. today on his Triggered show?
No, I haven't had time. I'm still at the office.
Ross Coulthart just brought up exactly what you just said, Robert, about the cabal and the need. He said, listen, you need to speak to your father, your dad, about what's going on in government, and please have him address. And he did use the word cabal. And it looks like Donald Trump Jr. is very serious about this too. And he said, I will speak to my father. It looks like what you just said. I would be a little bit more than just slightly hopeful. I see something going on here, Bob, and I see you being at an upcoming hearing. I'm actually like Stephen Bassett. I'm a little bit overly optimistic at the point because everything that's going on. But I think that we might see some action from the Trump administration on this. I'm not kidding. I'm getting that vibe. Steven's getting that vibe. I don't know if Toby necessarily, I can't speak for Toby, but wouldn't that be incredible to see Robert Salas undertaking, raising his hand and taking the oath and testifying in front of Congress? That is something I would love to see.
Me too.
So, Toby, any finishing thoughts on this? I do want to show his website as we close with Rob because I didn't want to keep him on too long. Him and his lovely wife, Marilyn, they're just awesome people, and I love them to death. Anything you want to add, Toby?
Yeah, let me...
okay, go ahead, Rob.
Let me just say, my website is spiralgalaxy.org. And if people want to see some of the evidence in the form of audio tapes and documents, I got it on there. And
I'm showing it on the screen as you say it. Go ahead.
Yeah. And I've also got that YouTube channel. I think you mentioned that already. So people can go there and listen to some of the tapes, the videotapes that I've made describing my incident. And other videotapes that I've made in presentations I've given before the National Press Club at various times. So it's all out there.
So I'm sharing everything you just discussed on the screen so everybody could see it. So Bob Salas at Giant Head 3, as I'm sharing the screen, you can see it here. It's also in the description of this broadcast. And I cannot thank Bob and his lovely wife, Marilyn, for taking time out on their Wednesday evening to be with Toby and I. Toby, any closing thoughts? Any finishing questions you want to ask Bob? Or actually, Bob, Toby and I have a show, you know. We'd love to get you on our show to talk about this stuff on KGRA, and we'll talk privately at some point when we'll arrange something like if you're interested in doing that with Toby and I.
Well, sure. At some point, I've got my schedule is really getting filled up, but
I can imagine.
And it might be beneficial to come and talk to you after I find out about this potential hearing.
Yes.
So
let's do that.
We'll keep in touch. Okay.
Yes. Let's please do that. You have my number. You know how to reach me through email. Definitely keep me abreast on that because I'm ready. Let's go. Let's do this. And like I said, I know Marilyn is like, yes, let's go. Let's do this because she's awesome like that.
Let's do it now.
Oh my gosh.
It's taken 30 years for crying out loud, and it's about 2/3 of his life I figured out.
And not only that, it took 27 years to tell you.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, that's in itself, that's wild the way that came about. But love to both of you. I think the world of both of you and the courage that it takes to be willing to take part of a hearing in front of the public and put it out there. And looking forward to speaking to you both in the near-term future, Toby and I. Toby, anything before we close it out?
I just want to say thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us tonight. We really appreciate it.
Well, thank you, Toby, and thank you, Bill, of course. I'm always willing to speak about this, especially to Congress if that should come to pass. So
agreed. Amen to that.
We'll see.
All right.
We'll see.
Keep in touch. We'll be in touch. And I'm going to let you all go, Toby, Robert, and Marilyn. And then I'm just going to wrap up the stream after I hang up with you guys. So, again, spiralgalaxy.org. And if you go to YouTube, you can just go search at Giant Head 3, and it'll take you right to Bob Salas' channel. So make sure to check all that. And Amazon, check out his books on Amazon. He's got awesome books. So everybody, stand by. Again, have a great night to Robert, Marilyn, and Toby, and we'll all be in touch.
Okay.
Right, have a good one.
Thanks again.
Good night.
Good night.
Bye-bye. Bye. Sweet. Sweet. And look, he's willing to testify in front of Congress. And trust me, there are others like himself that are willing to testify. And I just hope, I have this gut feeling, I just do. And I'm not getting overly political when I say this. The Republicans control the House, the Senate, the Judicial, Supreme Court, the presidency. If they want to make a move on something, right now is the time. And there are definitely Republicans in the House, specifically, that want transparency to happen and get rid of all this bureaucracy and have some oversight and have an ownership, audits. The American people deserve to know where the taxpayers' money is going to, the funding, for what, there's no accountability. And that's what Burchett is trying so hard to get to. So everybody has their own part to expose all this. And Robert, as a direct witness at the Malmstrom base, I mean, come on now. He had ultra top secret clearance. He's one of the commanding officers that are in control of Minuteman missiles, ICBMs. I mean, his credentials speak for themselves. And he's got, like, on his website, spiralgalaxy.org, he's got so much stuff there that you should download and look at it. This is not a standalone case. This happened in quite a few bases, and still there's incursions going on to facilities, military facilities. If anything, this is a grave national security threat. And this happened in the 60s. Yeah, the Cold War, that whole deal. But my gosh, please get everything they can, documentation. Let's get a hearing where people like him, direct witnesses, with collaborating other individuals that were there as well, if possible. But Congress has to do their job if they can, to get the information that is directly tied to their account. Let's put this mosaic, this puzzle together and present it to the American people. That's why I keep emphasizing it's getting access to this classified information, because they don't want you to see that. Because it ties into everything the people are saying that's going on. I think of someone that I know, and I can't speak on his behalf, but let's just say I know someone that was involved with the Rendlesham incident. Now, he doesn't want to come forward, because it's a bunch of BS what they want to put him through to try to get him to testify. You don't even know. It's crazy. Poor guy, what he's being put through and asked, it's just crazy. But that's a good example. What about Rendlesham? What about Loring? What about all these other bases? I mean, I have a book somewhere, I don't know where it is, but it refers to many bases. And like I said, it's still going on. Did anybody fully explain what happened at Langley with all those drones? Have we heard of any explanation? Forget about the drones in Jersey and Pennsylvania and here near me. 5 minutes from my house. They shut the airport down due to a drone. That's Stewart, National Guard. I mean, but what about Langley? I believe that was in October. There's so much stuff going on out there. And I think, now, I'm seeing if I have this book, and then I'm going to wrap this stream, because this is just it's for Bob Salas. I was thinking of Spearing for some international UFO stuff. I don't know if I have the book here, but this is here it is. It is here. This one right here. It relates to his case. Because it's spoken about in this book. Malmstrom's in here, and so are numerous other bases at the time that had incursions. And like he said, he's at Oscar, he got him Echo, he had them confused, and there's something going on in Echo. I mean, there was stuff going on all over the place. And these are ICBMs. I would recommend this. And I would recommend Bob's books. Go to Amazon, check them out. So the video, and just to close this out, that Toby and I had a private discussion about, is we don't know because maybe they're going to show other videos. But we don't think now, after further information coming in, that it is the same video that we were given information on. Okay? This has to do with... I'm just going to be quiet. I'm stopping. Shut up, Bill. Stop. I almost slipped. But it does not have to deal with the same thing that we were told behind the scenes. It's something different. But it is an exclusive video that... And kudos to Russ Colhart for the work that he does. All the people that are involved to get all this out to the public. And the people that are coming forward themselves. Because they're the ones. They're the ones that have the true courage to come forward and bring this in front of the American people and the world. And remember, Saturday, set your DVRs for Saturday, 8 p.m. Eastern, News Nation, for this UFO special, crash retrieval special. I already set mine. And if you get a chance, and again, don't look at this in a political spin. Check out on Rumble, go to Donald Trump Jr., look up Donald Trump Jr., Triggered, and check out the show he did today with Ross Colhart and Lou Elizondo. That'll give you some insight of what's going on and the direct conversation he had with Donald Trump Jr., which was, I thought, excellent. He did not hold back. I loved it. And I have to say, very impressive, Donald Trump Jr. With his questioning of Russ Colhart, I thought it was superb. So if you get a chance, go check it out. If you don't, if you don't use Rumble, just go to rumble.com, search Triggered Donald Trump Jr., and you'll find today's episode. And I say that because if you're interested in the discussion we just had with Robert Salas, because it's all tied, I think you'll find that very interesting because it's all leading in. Okay? Anyway, I'm going to end this stream. I will be back shortly. We might have a Blue Origin test flight tonight after all at 1 a.m. Eastern. So I'm going to take a needed break, some station work, and I'll be back in an hour or so. So thank you for those that were here watching. I want to definitely thank Toby for coming on with me to host Robert Salas. And of course, Robert Salas, who is such a true gentleman. And I'm telling you, had conversations numerous times with his wife is such a sweetheart. Oh my gosh. I wish I lived in California so I could go hang out and visit them. Oh my gosh. And go to lunch with them and Earl Grey Anderson. But I might be going to California in the fall, so you never know. Never say never. Anyway, so to everybody that's watching, we'll be back. I'll be back later. Have a great rest of your night and see those later on that are going to tune in for Blue Origin test flight.